I want you to close your eyes for a second. We're going to start today by visualizing a sound, not a sight, but a sound. Imagine you are standing in uh, the royal district of the ancient capital of Egypt. Maybe it's Avaris, maybe Memphis. This is the Bronze Age superpower. The bureaucracy is humming. Scribes are scratching on papyrus. Guards are standing like statues. It's quiet. It's controlled. It is the absolute center of the civilized world. And then, from inside the inner sanctum of the vizier, the second most powerful man on earth, there is a scream.
And it's not just a shout of anger. I mean, the text is very specific here. It uses the Hebrew phrase, "Vayet tin et kolo bivki." That literally means he gave forth his voice in weeping. So this wasn't, a whimper. It was a guttural and uncontrolled wail. It was so loud that the Egyptians standing outside the chamber heard it. The text actually says that even the household of Pharaoh heard it. This is a complete, total collapse of imperial protocol.
That is the image that just haunts me. You have this man, Zaphenath-Paneah, that was his Egyptian name. He's dressed in the finest linen. He's wearing the gold chain of office, likely has the heavy eye makeup, the shaved head. He is the image of stoic, unshakable power. He's the mask of the empire. And suddenly he breaks. He screams for his attendants, his guards, all the Egyptian staff to get out. Leave me! And then he's alone with these 11 dusty, terrified shepherds from Canaan.
And the mask drops. He looks at these men, and we have to remember, these are the men who debated murdering him in cold blood 22 years ago. And he utters two words in Hebrew, Ani Yosef, I am Joseph.
Wow. It has to be the highest voltage moment in the entire book of Genesis. The tension in that room must have been, suffocating. But to really get why that moment matters, why it isn't just, a soap opera twist or some dramatic reveal, we have to look at what was happening before the screen. We have to understand the silence.
That's it. That is it. The silence of God, the silence of a hidden identity, the silence of a man named Job sitting in the ashes, wondering, where has the judge gone? Today, on Timely Word, we are doing a deep dive into the unmasking. We are pulling from three very specific and I'd say very heavy texts, Matthew 23, Genesis 45, and Job 23.
It's a bit of a weird mix, isn't it? I mean, on paper, they look pretty disconnected. You've got Jesus yelling at Pharisees in Jerusalem. You've got Joseph crying on his brothers in Egypt. And you've got Job putting God on trial in the land of Uz.
It sounds disconnected, I know, but the thread that ties them all together is this tension between the external and the internal. So we're going to look at the unmasking of the hypocrite, these religious leaders who act the part but are, dead inside. Then we're going to see the unmasking of the Savior, the brother who reveals his identity to save the very people who hurt him. And finally, the unmasking of the gold, the refining process that happens when we think God has completely left the building.
So we're going to explore the difference between just acting religious and actually being refined. And along the way, I think we're going to see a really beautiful, multifaceted picture of God. You've got the Son who teaches, the Father who provides, and the Spirit who actually goes down into the Egypt of our lives with us.
And if we do our job right, by the end of this conversation, you'll understand why the silence you might be feeling from God right now isn't abandonment.
Yeah.
And you'll understand why the wagons, and we will definitely get to the wagons, are coming to carry you home.
So let's jump into the dusty streets of Jerusalem first. We're in Matthew 23. The scene is tense. The teacher Christ is speaking to the crowds and his disciples, and he is not holding back. This is often called the Woes, but honestly, reading through it, it feels more like a demolition. He is dismantling the scribes and Pharisees piece by piece, and he starts with this concept of the seat.
All right. The scribes and the Pharisees have seated themselves in Moses' seat. This is huge context that, we often miss. Is it a metaphor? Yes, of course. But was there an actual chair? Probably. Archaeologically, we have found stone seats in ancient synagogues, at Chorazin, at Delos, that were designated for the authoritative teacher. It was called the cathedra. When you sat there, you were speaking ex cathedra, with the authority of Moses himself.
Okay, so it's a position of real legislative power. They aren't just giving friendly advice. They are, in effect, binding the conscience of the people. They're saying, this is the law and you must follow it.
Precisely. And notice what Jesus does here. He's so brilliant. He validates the position while completely destroying the occupant. He says, therefore, all that they tell you, do and observe. He respects the office of Moses. He respects the law. But then he pivots to their behavior. But do not do according to their deeds, for they say things and do not do them.
They are actors sitting in a director's chair. And Jesus immediately points out the result of this hypocrisy. He talks about the burden. He says, they tie up heavy burdens and lay them on men's shoulders. Now, I've always read that as just Legalism, don't dance, don't drink, don't have fun. But in the first century context, this was much heavier, wasn't it?
Oh, much, much heavier. This is referring to the oral law, or the halakha. You see, the written Torah has 613 commandments. But the Pharisees, in an attempt to be super righteous, built what they called fences around the Torah. They created thousands of extra laws to ensure you didn't even get close to breaking the real law.
Give me an example of a fence. What does that look like?
Okay, so take the Sabbath. The law says do no work. Simple enough, right? But the Pharisees would ask, well, what is work? Is lifting a spoon work? Is dragging a chair across a dirt floor work? Because if you drag a chair, see, you make a furrow in the dirt, and that's technically plowing, which is a form of farming, which is definitely work. So they created all these minute regulations. You can't lift anything heavier than a dried fig. You can't walk more than a certain number of steps from your home.
It sounds exhausting. Just navigating daily life becomes a total minefield of potential sin.
That's the heavy burden. They took the joy of the Sabbath, which was supposed to be a gift of rest, and they turned it into a source of constant anxiety. And the kicker is what Jesus says next. But they themselves were unwilling to move them with so much as a finger.
That's the indictment of bad leadership right there. A true leader helps you carry the pack. A true leader says, this is heavy, let me help you. These guys were just adding weight to the rucksacks, standing back, and just watching people collapse under the strain. And the worst part is, they looked really good while they were doing it.
And that brings us to the visuals. Jesus starts attacking their fashion choices, essentially. He talks about their phylacteries and their fringes.
Okay, let's unpack this for the modern ear. Phylactery sounds like a medical condition or maybe a dinosaur. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, it does sound prehistoric. A phylactery, or in Hebrew, tefillin, is a small leather box. Inside are parchment scrolls with verses from the Torah, specifically the Shema, Hear, O Israel. Jewish men would wear them on their forehead and on their arm during prayer. This is a very literal interpretation of Deuteronomy. Bind them as a sign on your hand and let them be as frontals on your forehead.
So the concept itself is actually beautiful. It's about keeping the word of God close to your mind, the forehead, and your strength, the arm.
The concept is incredibly profound.
Yeah.
But the Pharisees were remixing it for their own gain. Jesus says they were broadening their phylacteries. They were making the boxes physically bigger. So you have to imagine walking into a prayer meeting. Yeah. Most people have a modest 1-inch cube on their forehead. But then a Pharisee walks in, and he's essentially strapped a shoebox to his head.
It's spiritual peacocking. That's what it is.
Exactly. It just screams, look how much scripture I have in here. Look how pious I am. My box is bigger than your box. And they were doing the same thing with the fringes that sit on the corners of their garments. They made them long and ostentatious. It's all about optics.
It's the ancient equivalent of the guy who posts a selfie of his open Bible with a perfectly placed latte and a highlighter, just to make sure everyone on Instagram knows he had his quiet time. It's performance art.
That is a painfully accurate analogy.
Yeah.
It's using the holy things of God as a prop for your own ego. And Jesus cuts right through it. He notes that they love the place of honor at dinners, the best seats in the synagogues, and they absolutely love the titles rabbi, father, instructor.
And here is where he drops a theological hammer. He prohibits these titles. He says, do not be called rabbi, do not call anyone on earth your father, neither be called instructors. Now, taken literally, this would make parent-teacher conferences really awkward. Hello, biological male progenitor, I'm the educational facilitator.
Right. We have to look at the heart of what he's saying. He isn't banning the concept of biological fatherhood or the role of a teacher. He is attacking the spiritual hierarchy that they had built. Look at the Greek word for instructor here. It's kathegetes. It means a guide, a master teacher, someone who leads the way and claims to hold the ultimate truth. Jesus is stripping away the idea that any human being can hold that position over your soul.
He's leveling the playing field.
Completely. He's saying one is your teacher, one is your father, he who is in the heavens, one is your instructor, the Christ. He is recentering the source of all authority. The Father is the only source of life. The Son, the Christ, is the only source of truth. Any human who tries to step in front of that and claim that title for themselves is, well, they're usurping the position of God.
Which leads to that famous paradox of greatness. The greatest among you shall be your servant.
It's the great reversal. It's the upside-down kingdom. In the Pharisees' world, greatness is measured by the size of the phylactery and the proximity to the head of the table. In the kingdom, greatness is measured by the towel and the basin. Exaltation follows humility. If you exalt yourself, you will be humbled. If you humble yourself, you will be exalted. It's a spiritual law of gravity. It's just how it works.
Okay, so now Jesus moves from this general critique into the woes.
Hmm.
And there are 8 of them in this text. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. It's like this drumbeat of judgment. And the word hypocrite, Hippocrates, that's a theatrical term, right, from the Greek stage.
It is. It means an actor, someone who wears a mask. In Greek theater, one actor might play 3 different roles just by switching masks. Jesus is saying, you are playing a character. This isn't the real you.
Mm.
And the first woe is, frankly, terrifying, the shut door. He says, you close off the kingdom of the heavens in the face of men.
That is so heavy. It's the image of a bouncer at a club who not only refuses to go in, but then locks the door so no one else can get in either.
It's the ultimate failure of a spiritual guide. You're supposed to be a bridge, but you become a barrier. They made the requirements for entering the kingdom so complex, so burdened with that oral law we talked about, that normal people, fishermen and carpenters, they just gave up. They felt they could never be good enough.
And then the second woe connects right into that, the proselyte. He says, you go about the sea and the dry land to make one proselyte, so one convert. And when he becomes one, you make him twice as much a son of Gehenna as yourselves.
Son of Gehenna. That is such strong language. Gehenna was the valley outside Jerusalem where trash was burned. It smoldered constantly. It was the image of hell. And think about the effort described there, crossing sea and land. These Pharisees are zealous. They are hardworking missionaries. But because their source is dead, their fruit is dead.
It reminds me of how extremism works in any context. A convert to a rigid ideology is often more fanatical than the person who taught them. They have something to prove.
Exactly. They reproduce their own hypocrisy, but with double the intensity. Then we get into this weird logic about the gold in the temple. This part always confuses people. They say, if you swear by the temple, it's nothing. But if you swear by the gold of the temple, you are bound. What is that about?
It seems completely backward.
Well, it is. And it's a deep dive into their twisted value system. Jesus is exposing their materialism. To them, the temple, the actual dwelling place of God on earth, is less binding than the gold in the treasury. They value the currency over the presence. And Jesus just asked the obvious, devastating question, which is greater, the gold or the temple that makes the gold holy?
It's putting the price tag above the sacredness. It's like caring more about the expensive frame than the masterpiece painting inside it.
That's a great way to put it. And he does the same thing with the altar and the gift. They care more about the offering, the money, the sacrifice, than the altar of God itself. It's a complete inversion of spiritual reality.
And then we get one of the funniest, but also most biting images in the entire Bible. The gnat and the camel. Blind guides who strain out the gnat but swallow the camel.
It's a hyperbolic cartoon. It's meant to be absurd. You have to imagine the scene. A Pharisee is about to drink his wine. He takes a piece of cheesecloth and carefully, meticulously strains the liquid. Why? Because if there's a tiny gnat in there and he accidentally swallows it, he has eaten an unclean animal. He has violated the law. He is obsessed with the microscopic detail. But then, while he's celebrating his ritual purity, he opens his mouth and swallows an entire camel hump, hooves, fur, and all. And the camel was one of the largest unclean animals in that region.
The image is just ridiculous. It's meant to make you laugh, but it's so tragic.
It is. He's saying you obsess over tithing your mint and your cumin, literal spices from your garden herb rack, but you have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness.
That is the core, isn't it? You can have perfect technical compliance, your tithe check can be calculated to the penny, and still be a complete monster if you lack justice and mercy.
That's the definition of religious hypocrisy. Major on the minors, miss the majors entirely.
Then he moves to the cup and the dish. You cleanse the outside, but inwardly they're full of extortion and self-indulgence.
This is the unmasking theme again, isn't it? You can polish the outside of a cup until it shines, until you can see your face in it. It can look perfect. But if the inside is full of mold and poison, you can't drink from it. It's useless. And Jesus says, cleanse first the inside, so that the outside also may become clean. Real spiritual work is inside out, not outside in.
And that leads to the most famous metaphor, and I think arguably the most visceral, the whitewashed tombs.
Yes. We touched on this earlier, but let's really look at it. In that time, before the big feast days like Passover, they would take lawn whitewash and paint the caves and tombs bright white. Now, the practical reason was actually public safety. If a pilgrim coming to Jerusalem accidentally touched a grave, they became ceremonially unclean for 7 days. They would miss the Passover. So the white paint was a warning sign. Stay away. Death is here.
So, on a sunny day in Jerusalem, the hillsides would be dotted with these gleaming white monuments. They must have looked beautiful.
It looked pristine. But Jesus flips the metaphor on his head. He says, you are exactly like those tombs. You look righteous to men. You have the right clothes, the right vocabulary, the right posture. You look bright and clean. But inside is decomposition, dead men's bones, all uncleanness.
He's telling them you are spiritually dead and you are contaminating everyone who touches you. It's an unbelievably harsh indictment.
And the biting irony of it all is that they are building monuments to the prophets. They're saying, oh, if we had lived back then, we wouldn't have killed the prophets like our fathers did. They are virtue signaling about the past while actively plotting to kill the greatest prophet in the present.
The tone shifts at the very end of this chapter, though. It goes from this fiery, righteous anger of woe to you to this deep, profound lament. Jerusalem. Jerusalem.
This is the heart of the Son unveiled. After all that anger at the leaders, the false shepherds, he looks at the city, the people, with pure grief. How often I desire to gather your children together the way a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you would not.
But that imagery, a mother hen, it's so vulnerable. It's not a lion, it's not a warrior king, it's a farm animal.
It is. A hen gathers her chicks when danger is coming. She uses her own body as a shield. If a hawk comes or a fire comes, the hen takes the blow to protect her brood. That is what Christ wanted to do. He wanted to cover them with his own righteousness, his own life. He wanted to take the judgment for them.
But the tragedy is in that final phrase, and you would not.
The tragedy of human will. He was willing. They were not. They preferred their whitewashed tombs to the shelter of his wings. And the result is desolation. Your house is left to you desolate. Without the presence, the temple is just an empty building. It's just masonry.
And he ends with, you shall by no means see me from now on until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. It's a cliffhanger. He's leaving the house. The presence is departing.
The unmasking of the hypocrites ends with the departure of God. But this idea of gathering and saving the brothers, this is the perfect bridge to our second scenario. Because where the Pharisees rejected the hen, the brothers of Joseph were about to be gathered by the ruler.
Let's go back to that weeping ruler in Egypt. Genesis 45. The scream has happened. The Egyptians have fled the room. The mask is off. I'm Joseph.
Put yourself in the sandals of the brothers. Judah, Reuben, Simeon. This is their worst nightmare scenario made real. They sold this boy. They faked his death. They listened to their father scream in grief for 22 years. And now they find out the boy they sold is the Lord of Egypt, the man holding the power of life and death over the entire known world.
The text says, his brothers could not answer him, so troubled were they at his presence. That word, troubled, nifhaluit, implies terror, right? Trembling. They aren't relieved yet. They're waiting for the execution order.
They expect judgment. Just like the Pharisees deserve judgment, these brothers deserve it. In the ancient Near East, blood feuds were the law of the land. Joseph has every legal and cultural right to snap his fingers and have them beheaded.
But then comes that great reversal, Joseph says. He says, do not be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life.
This is one of the most profound theological statements in the entire Old Testament. Joseph does not deny their sin. Notice that. He says, you sold me. He doesn't gaslight himself. He doesn't whitewash the past and say it didn't happen. But he reveals a deeper, higher narrative. God sent me.
He sees the sovereignty of God over the sin of man. He sees both at the same time.
Exactly. He realizes that his suffering, the pit, the slavery in Potiphar's house, the false accusation, the years in prison, all of it was a divine setup. It was necessary to get him to the throne so he could save the very people who betrayed him.
That is a staggering level of forgiveness. It's seeing the world through a wide-angle lens instead of, a microscope focused on the offense.
It's a picture of Christ, isn't it? Think about it. We, humanity, rejected him, sold him out for 30 pieces of silver, nailed him to a cross. But through that very act, he went ahead of us to prepare a place. He became the Lord of the world, the Lord of Egypt, to feed us the bread of life. Joseph is the prototype of the suffering servant who becomes the king.
And Joseph tells them, God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant and to keep you alive by a great deliverance.
He's looking at the bigger picture. The famine is still raging. There are 5 more years of no plowing and no harvest. This is catastrophic.
Yeah.
If Joseph isn't there, the line of promise, the line of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob dies of starvation. The Messiah's line ends right there.
So he issues a command, hurry and go up to my father.
Oh.
Tell him, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not delay. He invites them into the best of the land, a place called Goshen.
And Goshen was the Nile Delta. It was lush, well-watered, perfect for livestock. He promises to sustain them there, to take care of them.
But here's the detail that always gets me. The wagon.
Yes, the wagons are crucial. They're more than just transportation.
Pharaoh commands it too. Take wagons out of the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives.
Oh, why is this such a big deal? Why does the text focus so much on the mode of transport? You have to understand the technology gap between Canaan and Egypt. Canaan was hill country. They used pack animals, donkeys, maybe some camels. They didn't really use wheeled transport for people. It wasn't practical. Egypt, however, was the superpower of technology. They had flat lands, roads. These wagons were likely royal transport.
It's like sending a fleet of private jets or, black SUVs to pick up a family that's used to riding mules.
Exactly. And you have to think about Jacob. He's an old man. He's cynical. He's been grieving for 22 years. He thinks his favorite son is dead. If the brothers just came back and said, "Hey, Dad, guess what? Joseph is alive and he's the king of Egypt," Jacob would say, "You're lying. Just like you lied about the wolf eating him. Just like you've lied to me my whole life." Words are not enough for him.
He needs proof. He needs evidence.
He needs provision. He needs to see something that could only come from Egypt, something that could only come from a position of absolute power and grace. The wagons are the proof.
And before they leave, Joseph has this incredibly intimate moment. He falls on Benjamin's neck and weeps. He kisses all his brothers.
The barrier of fear is broken by love. He weeps on them. It's the restoration of the family. He doesn't hold the past against them. It's truly washed away.
So the brothers go back to Canaan. They make the long trek. They get to Jacob. They tell him the news. Joseph is still alive. And the text says, his heart grew numb, for he did not believe them.
Numb. That's such a real reaction to trauma. When you've been hurt that badly for that long, you can't let yourself hope. Hope is dangerous. Hope hurts. So his heart just shuts down. It's a defense mechanism.
But then, verse 27, when he saw the wagons which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob their father revived.
The wagons did what the words couldn't. It was the tangible evidence of grace. He looks at those Egyptian wheels, the craftsmanship, the provision for his whole family, and he realizes, this is real. And his declaration changes everything. It is enough. Joseph, my son, is still alive. I will go and see him before I die.
It is enough. That's the feeling of total satisfaction. All the questions, all the pain, it's answered in that moment.
That's the feeling of the gospel, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you finally realize the king isn't out to kill you, but he sent the transport to bring you to him. It is enough.
There's a massive theological parallel there for us, right? We hear the gospel, God loves you, you are forgiven, and sometimes our hearts are numb. It sounds like a fairy tale. It's too good to be true. But then we see the wagons. We see the provision. We see the change in a friend's life, or we experience a specific answer to prayer, or we just feel a peace that doesn't make any sense. The wagons carry us when our faith is too weak to walk.
That's beautifully put. The wagons are the grace that carries us to Goshen.
So now we move to segment 3, the descent. Jacob packs up everything. He's got the wagons. He's heading south, but he stops at Beersheba.
He stops to offer sacrifices. And this is significant because Beersheba is the southernmost border of the Promised Land. It's the edge. Once you pass Beersheba, you're out. And historically, going down to Egypt was usually a very bad idea. Abraham got in trouble there. Isaac was told specifically not to go there. Jacob is likely terrified. Is he leaving the promise of God by leaving the land of God?
It's a crisis of geography and theology. Is God only in Canaan? Is his presence limited to this one piece of real estate?
And that's when the visions of the night happen. God calls Jacob, Jacob. And I love that repetition. It's so personal. And notice the assurance. I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt.
And then he makes this incredible promise. I myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I myself will also surely bring you up again.
This unveils a beautiful aspect of God, the Spirit who descends. We often think of God as being up there in heaven or in the Holy Land. But here God says, I'm going down into the exile with you. He's the God who descends into the difficult places, into the darkness.
He accompanies them into the trial. He doesn't just wait at the finish line. He actually gets in the wagon with them.
Yes. The Spirit of God moves into the darkness with his people. You are never in Egypt alone. He's there with you.
Now the text gives us a roll call. Genesis 46 lists the names of the family members who went down. It's a lot of names. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. Why does the text pause the narrative to list them all? It can feel a bit like a phone book.
It can, but it's the proof of the promise. It's the 70. They went down as a family of 70 souls. 400 years later, they come up as a nation of millions. It's the seed count.
Hmm.
God is showing that he accounts for every single one of them. He doesn't lose a single one.
And there are some interesting details buried in there. It mentions Shaul, the son of a Canaanite woman.
That's a lovely little nugget of grace, isn't it? The Canaanites were the enemies, the outsiders. But here's a woman grafted into the family line, her son listed among the princes of Israel. The shut door of the Pharisees is nowhere to be found here. The family of God is broader than we think.
And the reunion finally happens. Joseph prepares his chariot. He goes to meet his father in Goshen.
He fell on his neck and wept on his neck a good while.
Yeah.
The weeping continues. It's the release of all that tension, all those years. And Jacob says, "Let me die now, since I have seen your face."
It's the ultimate nunc dimittis. Lord, now let your servant depart in peace. The longing is satisfied. His life story feels complete.
But Joseph is also incredibly practical. He gives them strategic wisdom. He tells them, when Pharaoh asks what you do, tell him you are keepers of livestock.
Why? Why that specific profession?
Because, as the text explicitly says, every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians.
That seems so counterintuitive. Hey guys, when you meet the king, tell them you do the one thing they hate. Why would you want to be an abomination?
It's brilliant. It's 4D chess. Joseph knows that if the Egyptians like them too much, they will assimilate, they'll intermarry. They will marry into Egyptian families, worship Egyptian gods, and disappear into the culture within a generation. But if they are an abomination, if they are socially repulsive because of their job, the Egyptians will leave them alone. They will give them the land of Goshen, which is fertile, but also isolated.
So God uses the world's rejection to protect his people. Their very otherness becomes their shield.
Exactly. The abomination label becomes their shield. It allows them to grow into a great nation without losing their identity.
Okay, so we've seen the hypocrites unmasked. That's the fake gold. We've seen the brother unmasked, the provision of the wagons, but we have to be honest with the listener. Not everyone is in Goshen yet.
Right, not at all.
Some people are still in the pit. Some people are in the famine, and they are scanning the horizon, and there are no wagons. The sky is brass.
And that brings us to Job.
Job chapter 23. This is the dark night of the soul.
Job is suffering. He has lost his children, his wealth, his health. He is covered in boils. And his friends are accusing him of secret sin. They're acting just like the Pharisees. You must have sinned. Now carry this burden of guilt. And in chapter 23, Job is looking for a trial. He wants his day in court with God.
He says, "Oh, that I knew where I might find him, that I might come to his seat."
Notice the word seat again. We started with the Pharisees in Moses' seat, a seat of false judgment, a seat of burden. Now Job is looking for God's seat, the seat of true justice. He wants to present his case. He believes if he could just talk to God, he could explain himself and be vindicated.
But the problem is God is hiding. He can't find him.
I go forward, but he is not there. And backward, but I do not perceive him. To the left, where he acts, but I cannot look on him. He hides himself on the right.
That is a terrifying description of the spiritual life sometimes. It's the multidimensional absence of God. You look at your future forward, but God's not there. You look at your past, backward, God's gone. You look to your active life, the present, left and right, and he is invisible.
This is the Deus absconditus, the God who hides. Job is experiencing the silence. And for a believer, that silence is often more painful than the boils.
But right in the middle of this panic, Job pivots. Verse 10, this is the anchor.
But he knows the way that I take.
Man, he knows. The Hebrew there is yada, right? It's not just intellectual knowledge, it's intimate.
Yes, it means he knows me through and through. Even when I can't see him, he has me on radar. He is tracking me. And then he uses this incredible metaphor of the crucible. When he has tried me, I shall come forth as gold.
Let's talk about that refining process, because trying gold isn't like trying on a shirt. It involves fire, extreme, intense heat.
It does. To refine gold, you have to melt it down completely. You have to turn the solid into liquid. Why? So that the dross, the impurities, the worthless stuff floats to the surface. Then the goldsmith skims off the dross. He does this over and over and over again until the gold is pure, until he can see his own reflection in it.
So the heat isn't punishment. That's the mistake Job's friends made. They thought the fire was because Job sinned.
Right. They thought it was the fire of judgment, like the Gehenna fire Jesus warned the Pharisees about. But Job realizes, even in his agony, that this is the fire of purification. It's teleological. It has a goal. The goal isn't ash. The goal is gold.
That recontextualizes the silence, doesn't it? The silence isn't abandonment. The silence is the kiln.
And the goldsmith never takes his eye off the metal in the fire. If he leaves it too long, it's ruined. If he doesn't make it hot enough, the dross doesn't come out. Job is holding on to the belief that God is timing this heat perfectly.
And Job defends his integrity here, too. He says, "My foot has held fast to his steps. I have treasured the words of his mouth more than my apportioned food."
And that just reminds me of the phylacteries again. The Pharisees wore the word on their forehead to be seen by men. Job hid the word in his heart, treasuring it more than lunch. One is show, the other is sustenance.
But even with this confidence, Job admits he's scared. He talks about the dread of sovereignty. It's not all confident faith.
No, not at all. He is of one mind, and who can turn him? He performs what has been appointed to me.
And he says, "Therefore I am terrified at his presence."
This isn't the terror of the brothers standing before Joseph thinking he might take revenge. This is the fear of the Lord. It's the awe of a creature realizing that the Creator is absolutely sovereign. He does what he wants. He appoints the darkness. He appoints the trial. It's not random.
Nor did he cover the deep darkness from my face.
God didn't shield Job from the dark. He sent him through it. Just like he sent Joseph to Egypt. Just like he sent the family to Goshen. The darkness is part of the appointment. It's the covering for the deep work being done in the soul.
So let's try to pull all these threads together now. We've looked at three very different unmaskings.
We have the Pharisees who represent the mask. They demand outward perfection, but there's no life inside. They claim the seat, but they block the door. They are the shut door.
Then we have Joseph, who represents the provision. He is the open door. He unmasks himself to save. He says, "God sent me ahead of you." He provides the wagons when we can't walk anymore. He is the picture of the son who rules and the father who provides.
And then we have Job, who represents the process. He is the one in the crucible, trusting that the silence of God is actually the refining fire of God. He is being turned into gold.
I keep thinking about the hen and the judge. Jesus wanted to gather Jerusalem like a hen, but they refused. Joseph successfully gathered his family to Goshen because they eventually trusted him. They got in the wagons.
That's the key, isn't it? The willingness to come, the willingness to trust. The brothers had to get in the wagons. Jacob had to leave Beersheba. We have to be willing to trust the timely word that says, "Come to me."
And practically, for you listening, how do we experience this now? How does this not just stay a 2,000-year-old story?
I think it starts by rejecting the leaven of the Pharisees in our own lives. Stop trying to polish the outside of the cup. Stop worrying about the seat of honor or the size of your ministry or your reputation online. Be real with God.
If you're dead inside, admit it. Don't whitewash the tomb.
Exactly. And then trust the wagons. When you feel numb, like Jacob did, look for the tangible provisions God has sent. Maybe it's a friend who checks in on you at just the right moment. Maybe it's a verse that just jumps out at you. Maybe it's just the fact that you woke up today. Those are the wagons carrying you to Goshen.
And if you are in the Job season,
Yeah.
if you are in the silence, what then?
Then you hold on to this. He knows the way you take. You aren't lost. You're being refined. The gold is coming.
And remember that promise from Genesis, "I myself will go down with you."
You aren't in Egypt alone. The Spirit descends with you into the pit.
Never alone.
We've unpacked a lot today. The fake teachers, the king, the suffering saint. But before we go, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought.
What's that?
The family is safe in Goshen now. They have the best of the land. They have food. Joseph is in charge. It's a happy ending, right?
For now. But the famine is still running for 5 more years. And if you know your history, eventually Joseph dies. Eventually a new Pharaoh arises who doesn't know Joseph. And the abomination that protected them becomes the excuse to enslave them. Goshen becomes a labor camp.
The cycle continues. The Egypt that saved them becomes the Egypt that enslaves them.
Which means the refining fire isn't a one-time thing, it's a lifestyle. The wags that saves you today might be the place you need deliverance from tomorrow. The question for all of us is, are you willing to stay in the crucible until the refining is truly done?
And are you willing to trust the God who brings you out just as surely as he brought you in?
That is the question. Stay curious, keep looking for the gold, and watch for the wagons. We'll see you next time on Timely Word.